about that. So what we're going to talk about is what you need to know about email marketing if you are a fund manager. And that is my background. I've worked in fund marketing for 20 odd years, built a product that kind of does email marketing. And most of our customers, are, what they use our product for lots of things, but fundamentally send out fact sheets, send out invitations, send out invitations to webinars, send out newsletters, monthly fact sheets, and all that kind of stuff. And there is a bizarre science that sits behind making sure your message gets out. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about email delivery, probably the most important part of this webinar. So that's why I put it in first. So you can actually understand the science that goes behind, what gets an email from one inbox to another when you're doing a bulk email. The second thing we're going to look at is the kind of email checks that you need to have in place. So you don't do that thing where instead of BCCing people, you CC them, and then, you are in a whole world of GDPR pain. The third one we're going to look at is content. And obviously we have the analytics to what content works and what content doesn't. And I'll be sharing with you the gold standard of one email that by far from all of the 300 users plus we have has for the last 4 years has consistently performed well. What we're going to look at as well is analytics, and we're going to take it beyond knowing who opens your emails. That really isn't enough. There is more structure and more kind of analytics you need to pull out to kind of augment your marketing proposition and your marketing campaigns, so people can be familiar with your brand and what channels are working, what channels aren't working, and what options you have, what technology stack can you build to kind of go to a point where you can use email marketing to raise assets and also preserve assets. So that's what we're going to cover. It'll probably take about 30 minutes to go through this. And if you've got any questions, just please pop them in either the chat or the Q&A section, and we'll get to them at the end, or we'll send a replay of this and you can reply to the replay with any questions you may have at a later date. Okay, so what is the worst thing when you send an email and you just wonder, does it actually hit anybody's inbox? And then, you've sent an email to an investor and the question is, did they get it? Did they not get it? Did I send it? Did it go to junk? Where did it go? And the ultimate marketer's nightmare is that email hitting junk. And it's one of those things is that it's so out of your control because it is so dependent on a whole bunch of factors. And, if you look at kind of traditional, literature on YouTube or, Google, it'll give you some very pat answers. And, 50% of my time in the past has been understanding why emails don't get delivered, because ultimately that is our business. And at a guess, if you go online, it's probably, they'll say the 4 or 5 things you need to take care of. It's a lot more. It's a lot more. And actually putting these slides together, I actually, for the first time, wrote down what are the things that affect email delivery. And it starts with, I use chess pieces because there's a reason for this. Obviously, the title is avoiding checkmate. Checkmate is your emails go to spam forever. So we don't want to do that. So it's about strategy, about moving your pieces around the chessboard and having a complete view of what you're doing. That's why I chose chess. And actually, from the templates I use, chess looks quite nice. So the first thing when you're sending out emails is to make sure your SPF and DKIM records are all in order. Now, what that means is if you're not using Outlook and you're using anything but Outlook, that service needs to be authenticated so that they can send emails on your behalf. So, and the reason for that is if you remember, sometimes you get an email come through and it's got the right domain from somebody, but they're just trying to spam you. Okay, so all they're doing is they've just changed the send email address to a domain that you're familiar with and have put some nefarious content in it. That is the SPF check. So what needs to happen is when you're sending emails out is that that SPF record is effectively a digital signature to say this third party can send emails on our behalf. So that's the first part. I mean, probably, you know, one of the most important things that need to be in place. Now, and the other part to this is making sure that your DKIM is set up. And DKIM is another digital key as a second layer of security that makes sure that the email that is being received has been sent from somebody who's already got authority to send that email on behalf of somebody else. Now, if those two are not set up, it is more than likely those emails will end up in spam. We may not even hit the spam folder and just be rejected at the firewall. So that is really, really important. There's another element to this called DMARC, which kind of ties into the same thing. So whenever you are, you know, setting up a service, talking to a service provider, that is the most important thing to have in place. It's sender authorization. So that's kind of the first part, probably the more kind of techie part to look at. The next thing is looking at IP reputation. Now, the interesting thing about IP reputation is it's very obvious, is that if the IP you're using is not yours and you're sharing it with somebody, you're reliant on everybody else adhering to, particular rules that, such as, the GDPR and the like, so that the emails that are going out are all compliant. And what an IP reputation depends on is if somebody flags an email as spam or reports an email, is that IP that gets blacklisted. Now, the problem with that is it's not just that single IP that has the problem. It's the IPs that sit around it. So even if you're using a vendor or you've got an IP address that's absolutely clean and works absolutely fine and doesn't fail any blacklist testing, if the IP addresses that sit around it have a bad reputation, that will absolutely affect how your emails are received. So not only owning your IP address or working with a provider that has a bank of IP addresses that are all have got a high reputation, absolutely increases your chances of delivery. So that's one part to this. IP reputation, there are tools out there that will allow you to actually check IP reputation, not only for single one, but things around it as well. MX Toolbox being one of them. Image density. Now, this is something that's, I don't know how whether it's new or not, but definitely for the last 10 years, I've definitely noticed this, is that if there is more imagery than text in your emails, it will absolutely hit the spam folders. So getting that right is incredibly important. So even though you may want your emails to be really branded with lots of incredible colors, lots of pretty pictures, lots of charts, lots of tables, a lot of performance, if that supersedes the amount of text you're putting in your emails and the font size of those emails, it again starts to track as spam, falling again, at the firewall potentially. And the reason for that as well is that, if you are sending emails and people actually go into their email clients and report them as junk, that affects emails as well. And there is a correlation between the number of people who junk emails and the number of images. So image density on an email is really, really important to get right. And the reason people get this wrong is because if you send this to a graphic designer, all they want to do is show you how brilliant they are. And you look at something and says, wow, that looks amazing. However, as far as an inbox is concerned, an inbox doesn't care. Inbox cares about image density. So getting that right is really important. Okay, so the next thing is anti-spoofing. Now, anti-spoofing is where, again, it's a bit like SPF and DKIM, but it's making sure that you yourself, so if you have a particular domain, so our domain being ProFuncon, if somebody is sending on our behalf, we need to make sure that the sender's IPs are whitelisted with us. And that is, a secondary check that allows people to send emails on our behalf. It's not a huge one, but if somebody has got anti-spoofing set on their firewalls, it will prevent an email not to be delivered, irrespective of their SPF records, their IP reputation, and image density. So that's quite important to have in place. The last thing on this slide is bulk email detection. And this is really clever. And this has probably started a few years ago. So what's happening now is mail servers around the globe that are monitoring email reputation, and it's a company called Ironport that do this. They are actually checking if when emails are being sent out by an IP address, have the emails got the same type of content? And if it does, it immediately realizes this is not a one-to-one email, which it would let through, or a one-to-one email with a few CCs in there. It actually realized it's an IP address spewing out identical content over a period of time. Over a period of time that is very quick. And again, that triggers alerts. It triggers alerts to these iron ports that sit on the internet that mail servers use to connect to. So when an email comes in from a domain and they make a query to Ironport, who's owned by Cisco now, Ironport will turn around and say, you know what, this email is part of a bulk email send, flag it as spam potentially, or definitely tag it or reduce its deliverability score. So what will then happen, what you'll see with all these 5 elements, it's a multiplicative effect, which means that it's a question of your spam rating depends on getting all of these right. And if you get them wrong, if you get one of these wrong, it actually has a multiplicative effect. I can't pronounce that word, but you get where I'm going with it. So that's 5, right? But there's more. Okay, there's more. Bounce, oh, wait a second, I think I've gone past the slide. Here we have. So the other things that trigger spam is content. Subject lines having words that are generally associated with spamminess. And in our sector, fundraising, things like, investment, all that those words are trigger words. It's also punctuation in subject lines that we found trigger spam as well, using punctuation to highlight things will take your emails into spam. And I've noticed that. So when emails start to go into spam, I kind of notice, right, they've used 2 hyphens, they've used 2 colons. Okay, take that away, make it as a normal sentence. Now, one of our, so Bloomberg, who we work with, if you look at their headlines, it's only 2 or 3 words, maybe 4 at a stretch. And they've kind of worked this out that interestingly, they get more opens the less number of words that are in their subject. So it kind of stands to reason. If they're doing that, you guys might as well do it as well. But yeah, what is in your subject, what's in your body definitely has an effect, especially in our sector, as to emails being trapped as spam. The other part is that, making sure that when you are, sending bulk emails through a provider or doing it yourself, is that the email has a text equivalent. And what that means is that there's an email inside the email where all the formatting has been taken away. So those of you on the call who can remember a BlackBerry, so that the email can appear on a device like a BlackBerry, so you can look at it and you can say, without any formatting, that there is text that's coming along with the HTML in this email. Again, that is really important to making sure emails are seen as not seen as spam. Okay. Another massive problem people find, which is mixing of HTTP and HTTPS content. So those of you who are not familiar with what those mean, HTTP is unsecured content or unsecured images, and HTTPS is where the traffic that's running on is encrypted. That's a link to a website, a link to an image, or something like that. Any kind of web asset, as we call them. And the problem is, if in an email, all the links to an image or links to a web page or a link to a PDF, if these are not encrypted, it has again a detriment on the email delivery. And mixing those two, so let's say some of your content is on a secure site, some of it's not on a secure site, that is a problem. And again, it triggers an alert with because most spammers, they won't spend the money having a digital certificate, so they just use HTTP on insecure content. So immediately, that just triggers another red flag. Non-existent sender, oh my goodness, this is like, if you're sending an email from a mailbox that doesn't exist, 100% that email is not going to get through, because the mail server that you're sending to will receive that and say, let me just check this person exists, sends a ping back to the original mail server that it's being sent from, or the domain rather. Does this person exist? No, it doesn't. Bad idea. The other thing that affects email delivery is when you actually get spam reports, and that is quite a hard thing to deal with, because what happens is, if, for example, somebody goes into their inbox, tags it something as spam, is in Gmail, tags something as spam, that is a physical person deciding that an email is spam. And that has a huge ranking on the multiplicative effect of all these things I've just spoken about. So if somebody physically goes in and is effectively curating that email, saying it's a spam, saying that email is spam, that is not a good thing. So in many ways, getting to the inbox, if your email is spammy or is not compliant with all these other things, is actually a bad thing, because if it looks spammy, it will get tagged as spam. If your content is not interesting, it'll get tagged as spam. If people are tired of you, it will get tagged as spam. So, spam reports are, to stay away from them is the best thing to do. Now, there is a counter to that, is getting off these spam reports. And that is just making sure that over time, less and less people tag you as spam. And then your spam rating effectively goes down, not up. Okay, one more slide. There's more to this. We probably should have done a whole webinar on just this topic, but a lot of people asked us to cover some more stuff. So we'll get to that. So the other thing is making sure that when emails are bounced, they're taken off your list. Again, we've covered identical content, but making sure, and this ties in with the BCCs and CCs, is making sure that you're just not BCCing and CCing people as part of your email, as part of your bulk email process, or sending out your fact sheets and stuff, is to kind of do that from a more structured way, using a product that lets you do that. Because again, as I said earlier on, having too many CCs in an email doesn't look right. Having too many BCCs on an email doesn't look right. If the content's identical, again, it'll fall at the firewall. And lastly, very lastly, on this subject, is images not being embedded. And it's that classic thing where email providers use images to track who's received, who's opening an email, who's read an email, who's forwarded an email, and all that kind of analytics. If you've got images that are not embedded, it is again a chance that the email will be flagged as spam, or the images won't be shown. And the problem is, if you've got an image-heavy email with images that are not displayed, if it looks garbage, it won't get read, and kind of in many ways affects the perception of your brand and of your fund. So that is, the kind of the 101 on email delivery, or just on email delivery, forget email marketing. And, it is effectively like a chessboard. There are lots of things you've got to take care of to get it right. And it is not as simple as, because we're so used to of emails being one-to-one emails, that we actually forget that there's so much else that needs to go right, especially when you're sending a marketing email, a fact sheet, newsletter, quarterly. So my hope is that you don't end up in Checkmate. So that's the first part covered. So I hope that was useful. So that's delivery. The next part is email checks. What things should you be checking for before your emails go out? So there are 4 things, and they do say measure twice, cut once, but we're going with measure 4th, cut once. So that means measure 4 times, cut once. I tried, but it looks like I failed. So there are 4 things to look at. The first one to look at is, what does your emails that you're sending out look like on different clients? And when I mean by that, I mean on mobile devices, on different versions of Outlook, different versions of Apple Mail. And here is an example of an email that's been sent out, and we've rendered it on Apple, how it looks on Apple, how it looks on Outlook. But as you scroll down on this email, you'll actually notice that when you hit Outlook 07, 01, 10, and 2013, and anything after that, the formatting goes to pot. And there's a reason for that, because every iteration of an email client, they try and add all these kind of clever features that actually destroys the format. So when you actually click onto Outlook, you can actually see that what's happened there is completely destroyed the formatting of the email. And, it's one of those things where just because it looks okay on your email client and looks okay in your Outlook or your Gmail or on your mobile phone, doesn't mean it's going to be the same for everybody. So knowing what your email looks like, not only on a desktop, but also on mobile phones, as I'm demonstrating here, is again really important. And this email failed as well, because as you'll see, the email content hasn't stacked up for the mobile device, where it actually takes the image and stacks it under the text block. And again, this is something that would just be lost had this test not been run. So that's really useful to have and have available. So the second part to this is, especially when you're fund marketing, is to make sure your content is compliant. And if you're doing MiFID, if you've got MiFID compliance, and you've got to really make sure that you've got a compliant email that's going out. You've got to be able to run a bunch of checks to see, is there a disclaimer? Is there a risk warning? Is there notes on performance? Is there an unsubscribe element to it? Really, really important to have this available to the fund marketer. And yes, you can do this yourself, or there are heuristic tools out there that allow you to do this. So that's email content being compliant. The other thing is, again, making sure that your domain hasn't been blacklisted. And the thing with something being blacklisted is that, again, this is in the kind of the dark underworld of the internet. So, when you get blacklisted, it's a whole process to come out of that. And but before you send an email, you want to be sure that you're not on a blacklist anywhere. So there are, again, tools out there that allow you to check if your IP and your domain and even your supplier's domain has not been blacklisted. And finally, checking that your emails don't end up in spam. Now, again, the previous section was all kind of pre-flight exercises, is to say, how can we avoid emails going into spam? But the only actual way to see if an email goes into spam is to actually send the email. And so what we've developed is a way to actually deliver an email into an inbox. And from there, we can actually see where that email landed. Did it land in the inbox? Did it land in the spam box? And what we're also been able to do is build relationships with people like, Apple Mail, Google, Outlook, /Microsoft, and actually get advisory information back from them to say, this email has passed with a -1 score. and -1 being a good thing with spam means it's negative spam, so it's not spam. 0 means kind of debatable, 1 means definitely spam, and leaving that aside, we get advisories back. So we know even before a client of ours has sent an email, whether this email is going to be seen as spam or not. So these are kind of the 4 things, once you've created your email and are ready to press the send button, that you really need to have in place, so that, you know, when the email goes out, it doesn't look bad, it's not blacklisted, it doesn't end up in spam, and more importantly, that it's compliant. Okay, so that's the second part of 101. So content, so what content works, okay? So there are basically, from, you know, the last 20 odd years, 4 types of content that people have asked me, Paul, what works? You know, does text work? Does text and images work? Does a single call to action work? And more recently, do scrollable emails work? Well, these numbers I put in there are the, you know, from the last 4 years, we've aggregated, I have aggregated what content seems to work on the basis of engagement in emails. And it is really quite interesting that, you know, text and text itself has a much higher engagement than when something's got text and images. And a single call to action has, again, the most engagement from that. Scrollable, I'll come to in a minute, because that's relatively new. So the question then becomes is, wow, how do I implement this? And if you remember at the beginning of this webinar, I said, I'm going to show you the gold standard. Well, here is the gold standard. And what these guys at Guinness have done, they've basically taken all of that text, images, single call to action, and have put it in an email. So as you scroll through it, you kind of get a really good sense of the font. So, and I'm going to just run that again. Let's go to previous. And you'll actually see that there's a lot of white space. There's a single call to action. So if you already know about the fund and the managers and their awards and how wonderful they are, bang, straight, click on that on mobile phone, on a desktop. I'll get my monthly updates, happy with that. But if I want to know a bit more about the fund, scroll down. And as you scroll down, you learn more about the managers, what awards they've won, links to their website. So this is really, and the reason this is the gold standard is because for 4 years, it has outperformed every single email, that format. And if you're interested, the guy, Nick Pilkington and Jamie Graham from White Marble Marketing put that email together. So worth looking up if you're interested. Very impressed with what the work that these guys produce. Okay, so we've covered text, we've covered text images, we've covered the single call to action, but here's the new one. Here's the spanner in the works. Here's the one that breaks all the rules. It's a scrollable one. Image heavy and long. So what these guys have done, they've taken images, they've taken blocks, they've put titles in, and it's an email that almost looks like a brochure. And originally, when I saw this, I was a little bit, you know, I was a little bit skeptical. And I just thought, but actually it kind of covers all the block, literally, pun not intended, all the blocks, in as much as it tells you what it is straight away. It tells you what it's going to tell you. It's got these easy navigation within your email. And it is actually visually quite appealing. And with our editor, this is effectively what people receive on their desktop and in a slimmer down version on their mobiles. And the engagement for this for these clients of ours has been incredible, you know, and it's far outstripped anything I've seen before. And, you know, if you ask Mrs. Das, well, the current Mrs. Das, the only words I want to hear is, Paul, you were right. In this case, I was wrong. So that is a great design feature. And one of the great things about getting your design right is the ability to, whatever format you go for, is start to work on creating drip campaigns. Drip campaigns that have great content in a format that people are engaging with make a huge difference to, drip campaigns, to nurture campaigns. And, we've covered a lot of that in previous webinars. I won't go into it, but really makes a difference to your engagement, your brand perception, and how you can add that marketing alpha into what you're doing. Okay, the most important thing, as I said before with spam, everything is multiplicative. I hope I pronounced that right. And exactly the same with email content. It's all about getting it right. And the effects are, multiplicative, exponential. It's one of those things. Getting one of those wrongs is not a good thing, but getting them consistently right is a good thing. Okay, so that's content. Finally, analytics. Now, I really do love The Lion King, and this is my favorite clip from The Lion King. So I'll play it to you. Just indulge me, and I'll come back to it.
What was that? The weather. Very peculiar, don't you think?
Yeah. Looks like the winds are changing.
Change is good.
Yeah, but it's not easy. I know what I have to do, but going back means I'll have to face my past. I've been running from it for so long. Ow! Jeez, what was that for?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
Yeah, but it still hurts.
Oh, yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it. You see? So what are you going to do?
First.
So there you go. Let me just go to the next slide. There we go. The trouble with data, it's all in the past. And that's why I love that clip. And it is what you do with that knowledge that really makes the difference. So there are too many marketing, types, myself included, that ramp on and just rant on about data analytics, all that kind of stuff. But it's said in that clip from The Lion King, it's all in the past. What you're going to learn from it, and that is really what it's about. And when you're looking at analytics in whatever email campaign you're running, it's not the campaign per se that has the nuggets of information. It's being able to distill that information in a way that really helps your marketing decisions. So what I've got down here are probably the 4 most compelling analytics. And these aren't actually, there you go, I fell into that trap myself. Learnings from interpretations of data that you should be looking at. Things you should be looking at to know if your campaign is performing well or not, is your distribution list growing? The next thing you need to look at is, are your emails are they convincing? Are people interested in your emails that are going out? Is your content even working? Are people engaging with your content? And finally, are people getting email fatigue? Are actually people just unsubscribing from what you're doing? And what I really like about, this description, even though it's just saying emails sent, emails opened, links open and unsubscribe, it puts the analytics in a real human form that is really kind of quite simple to understand. And that really is the thing, what that data scientists really like to do. Like it's some hidden art that we're not going to tell you about, or, people who are kind of analyzing data. It's making that data available in human form that marketers who don't have a degree in, statistics can understand. So that's the real part of the first part of analytics, is kind of making that relevant to the marketeer and getting this data from your system. The next part is from, the emails you're sending out and the information you're gathering, who are your low-hanging fruit? So who are the people that are actively engaged with you that you may not be calling? Where are your cross-selling opportunities? So who are the people that are investors in one fund but are looking at things they're not invested in? Redemption risk, who are your investors that are looking to potentially pull their money out? And finally, what's your marketing alpha? Who are the people that have not engaged with you for, say, the last 6 months, but in the last months are engaging with you? And then giving that information to the sales team. So within the CRM, putting this information in your CRM so that a relationship manager, a business development guy or girl, they can go in and they can actually, without worrying about going into campaigns or anything like that, they can see who's their calling list for this week, this month, and work off that. And that really is so important when you're running, when sales and marketing need to be so much more aligned in, especially now, kind of post-pandemic. This really is how at least marketing can demonstrate real ROI to the asset raising team and the IR team. Okay, so we've gone to analytics. Finally, we're going to go into options, and I'm really sorry I've overrun. I hope that's okay. So basically, we covered delivery, checks, analytics, and content. And there are all kinds of products out there that will allow you to do that. But the interesting thing is they all do them in silos. And what we found is that, not only do marketeers struggle to buy the right product, they actually end up having to try and connect all these together and get into a point where they actually stop becoming, marketeers. They stop, helping the sales process, and they're ending up, almost borderline being coders. And they're almost caught up. Is the system will only be as stable as whichever element in this one I've shown you is actually working. So if one fails, the whole system fails, and a month later you realize, where's the data gone? So people do this, but there comes a point where this stops, and you've got to kind of think of a solution that brings this all together specifically for us fund marketeers. And the other thing, and it's a bit of a fool's gold, is when people start, on the delivery side, they actually say, okay, well, we're going to take something that's relatively cheap, and as time goes on, we're going to add more and more functionality. And the interesting thing is that as you add, from delivery, you go to checks, you go to analytics, and you go to content, your price again, it's almost, again, I'm using that word again, it's a multiplicative fact, because you're effectively dealing with 4 different suppliers connecting stuff together for you. So you're not only paying for the product, you're paying for the integration and the support 4 times over. So that is, the real challenge to say, how do you build this piecemeal, which people do, and people like to be busy, and they can convince themselves they're doing great marketing because they're busy and not using it to raise AUM or preserve AUM, or you can kind of come to a one-stop shop that has kind of integrated the best parts of these components into one place. And, and that's what we've actually spent the last 20 years doing. So if you're interested further, our website has got over 400 articles around marketing for fund managers. So people, that's 20 years worth of information we've collected. There are white papers as well, replays of webinars. And what we'll also do as part of the replay, you'll have the ability to connect with myself or Victoria. If you want to do an audit around what you're doing, more than happy to take you through that. So once again, thank you all for your time. We've got some questions here from Sarah. So yes, Sarah, so how do you combat the bulk detection issue? By default, most of our campaigns involve some degree of bulk send purely for efficiency. Yeah, so the way you do that is, firstly, you've got to make sure that all those emails aren't going out in one shot. So you've got to be able to have a system that throttles those emails. Secondly, by having dynamic content in there. So something even as simple as having a dynamic salutation. So dear Joe, dear Fred, dear Mary, even that is good enough to push through various spam filters. The other thing as well is if you've got the ability to create dynamic content built around email signatures, so that the owner of the contact is the one whose email signature is put on the email, Sarah, then that works as well. Okay. We've got Sarah. Oh, Sarah again. With the scrollable, it looks like a ton of images. Oh, that's a really good point. It's actually not. There are images there, but those blocks are actually text that has images on it. So it actually looks like an image, but it's not. And if you speak to someone in creative, they'll actually show you how that's done. Really, really good point. So thank you for that question. Okay, we've got somebody from anonymous attendee. So Anonymous has asked the question, is there anywhere that we can get this PowerPoint? Yeah, sure. What we'll do, the replay will be available, and what we'll do is we'll put a link to this PowerPoint on our website. So that will be sent as part of the replay email as well, which I think you should get today. Okay, so I'm just seeing, have we got any more questions? Yeah, we've got another question coming through. Let's have a look. Okay, somebody else, Michael. Yes, Michael, not a problem. We'll send these through. Could you attach a different time to send out emails in bulk? Yeah, you can do. And what we're able to do is send emails based on time zones. So if you've got a big set of emails going out, and as Sarah said originally, if you want to just split them out by time zone, you can automatically do that. And you've also got the ability to, as I said again, Michael to Sarah, is you can stagger emails just by throttling them back. So sending them out in smaller batches. So if you've got 1,000, sending them out in batches of 35 to different domains. Because if a single domain, say JP Morgan, gets 20 emails from you all within the same, minute, it'll kind of know pretty quickly that, you're trying to push emails to JP Morgan, and they may decide, depending on the flavor of the month, to block you or not. Okay, so we've got one more. I do believe we've got one more question from George. Hello, Giorgio. Is there a limit in the number of emails sorry, let me start again. Is there a limit in the number of emails sent that trigger bulk detection, or is that tens, hundreds, thousands? It is in batches. So we send batches of 1,000 is probably the high tide mark. Anything above that is probably, it's just gonna, it's like a bank transfer, right? Is that there's like £10,000, I'm told. It's like, if you transfer £10,000 into somebody's account, that's when the sirens go off somewhere. And our analytics have shown us that, for email, especially import, there is definitely 1,000 per batch, and the batches can be separated by a minute or two, is kind of best practice. So that's what kind of we go with in our own product. Okay, hello, Jeremy. Jeremy, apologies when late. Will there be a replay or another schedules? I can't do this again, Jeremy. But it's no worries. This is being recorded. It's on Clubhouse as well, and you will receive a replay of this after the webinar, Jeremy. Okay, I'm just saying, I feel like people asking me for the PowerPoint is probably the fame I so desperately crave, but let's leave that. I've got another question. Oh, there we go, Jeremy. Thank you. Okay, guys, I'm here for another 5 minutes. If you've got any more questions, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Well, I do understand I'm between everyone's Friday, well, at least in Friday in the UK. I think we've got another question. Here we go. David, how do you rate MailChimp? I like MailChimp. So I use MailChimp for my cricket club. And I know the guys at MailChimp in Atlanta. The thing that's really good about MailChimp, it's a really good entry point into kind of learning the basics of sending out emails, email formatting, getting a good idea of who's engaged and who's not engaged. And that's fantastic. I think the target market for MailChimp, is not fund managers. If you look on their website, and my wife uses MailChimp as well for her business, it's really targeted around the mama and papa software house, mum and papa, Etsy type, Amazon Prime, hair salon type users, where delivery is not a huge importance, getting analytics about, what's working over a period of time. A lot of clients of ours have migrated from MailChimp, and I think the thing one of the big things there is not getting a holistic view of all your campaigns. So if I go back to that slide, if I just go back to that slide, if you bear with me, where I spoke about, right, how do you see, here we go, how do you see, how your, is your distribution list growing? Are your emails convincing? That's very hard to pull out of that. It is doable. Also kind of getting this kind of information, cross-selling opportunities, low-hanging fruit, redemption risk can be done. You can pull that information out in Excel and kind of do that with VLOOKUPs and crosstab. But again, is that really what you want to be doing? And finally, kind of pushing that information into a consumable way within, your CRM, again, doable, but is a challenge. And that's why I kind of go with the fact that, yes, it's all very much doable. And, let's pretend this is MailChimp at the bottom and it's $30 a month. But as time goes on, as you want to add more and more functionality, it's going to be a cost of other products and time and maintenance, and you not doing what you're supposed to do as a marketeer in a hedge fund or an asset manager. Okay, not a bad product. So if you're getting started in the process, what would be the best strategy, tool, service to set up? So the best strategy, that's a good question. I know everyone says good question. The best strategy is to make a commitment, is to say, one, talk only about your investment strategy. Two, talk about your attitude to risk. Three, talk about your performance, in that order. That's the strategy. That has to be your commitment. Once you're committed to doing that, which is fairly easy to say, but we're so, performance is good. That's everybody wants to talk about that. That's not what it's about. It's being absolutely sure that when you send a communication out, does it fit these three parameters? Okay, that's the first part of strategy. The second part of strategy on marketing is all about what is your creative, because you are going to be shouting, you are going to be going for share of voice against, PIMCO, BlackRock, Vanguard. How are you going to get your share of voice out there? And a lot of it is done in the creative. And next month, the webinar is on creative with a creative director from one of our customers. And you'll actually see how the creative is important, how you put emails out, the imagery you use, the branding you use, the example I gave you from Guinness, as well, the photographs you take of people, the quality of fact sheet that you push out is incredibly important to effectively, that unconscious, brand recognition that, somebody will have from you, especially if you're starting. And, you've got to build drip campaigns into your strategy, because it takes 7 to 11 touches on an email for someone to actually recognize, your ethos, your, attitude to risk, your investment strategies. You've got to be consistent with that. And you've got to have processes in place that you can out communicate the BlackRocks of the world and, the PIMCOs of the world. Because ultimately people take their money to brands, whether it's whatever brand it is, versus, a startup, an emerging manager or a smaller manager, because they know they're going to be safe. And that's the change in behavior you've got to look at. It's almost like how Lidl in the UK is pushing against Waitrose and is pushing against, Tesco. It's all, and what they're doing is all around, the creative and the narrative they're creating. And that's why the tool is totally irrelevant. The tool, the software is totally irrelevant. What really matters is your brand getting out there, and are the analytics that you're providing to your sales team, are they able to use that to raise assets, raise and preserve assets? In answer to your question, what is the best service to, service. I mean, they're all on this slide. You can look at, sorry, let me just go back. Previous. I mean, you can pull these out of a hat, whichever one you want to use. If it's delivery, MailChimp, Stardot, Constant Contact, HubSpot. And the reason we haven't put ourselves in there is kind of we encompass all of that. So if you want to start cheap and kind of end up spending money when you're successful a lot, well, you can use that. Or, very rarely I say this, but, we have a package that, sits just past MailChimp that you can use as well. Hope that answers the question without me saying, buy ProFundCon, buy it now. Again, Sarah, thank you for coming back. Pardot's solid, powerful, based on the demos I've had. I like the direct integration with Salesforce. Thoughts, pros and cons. Again, Pardot is a fantastic product, very, very good generic product. And, it sits behind the Salesforce brand. It doesn't mean they're integrated. So I know that for a fact, by the way. It's not integrated, and it has a level of integration through Salesforce campaigns. And again, as I said to Robert, it's not the product, it's what you want to get out of it. And there is a definite point where Pardot stops, pretty much like MailChimp, and where products like ours start. So we do all that MailChimp and Pardot does, but what we do is out of the box, we're able to give you the analytics. So if we just go back to the previous slide, Sarah. There we go. All these animations. I hope you're all impressed with my animations. Didn't realize it was coming to bite me. Here we go. Is that the one? Oh, geez, sorry. Sorry. It's the one after this. I'm not doing a good job. Well, the slide I showed you, which had ProFundCon integrated with the other, Hot Prospects, Marketing Alpha, investors who are going to leave, and your cross-selling reports. That's what Pardot can't do. And you can spend a lot of time doing that and kind of going nowhere. So Pardot's good. It is very much a generic product. You will get caught in the Salesforce way of selling, paying all up front, paying consultants to make it work. And there are very, very few, Pardot they're a good product. They're a good product. I can't deny that. They're just not tailored for fund marketing. And you have to always, and that's about it. That's as far as I'd go without wanting to get sued by them. David, do you do a webinar on paid search? Is paid search? Do not use paid search. Do not use paid search at all. Zero. Don't go there. Don't go for paid type. Do not do paid ads, guys. Do not do paid guys. Because of your universe, if you can do thought leadership pieces like webinars, if you can do thought leadership pieces on your website, if you can track that engagement, and do content marketing where people receive information from you by leaving their details behind, just like you did for this webinar, that is how you do it. Do not go down the road of target ads at all. It is fool's gold. The best way to do this is, it's that thing where, if you're a fund marketer and you're going up against other managers, they will just outspend you on targeting ads. That's what they'll do. Okay. Do not do that. That is insanity. What you've got to do, you've got to find ways to educate people and nudge them towards your fund, nudge them towards your investment strategy, nudge them towards your attitude to risk. That's what you need to do. And again, build creative around that. That is the best way to spend your money. I'm part of a group of fund marketeers, and then we meet every Friday evening, and no one has had a good story with paid ads and no one has a good story using these big email automation platforms, as the previous question mentioned. So that's not the way. That is, save your money and save your disappointment. So sorry if I'm being blunt on that one. We've still got a good 30, 40 odd people still on here. So are there any more questions? Please ask away. And David, just going back to your question, SEO is probably, SEO is one of those things, it takes long, it's difficult to do, but if you do it right, has the most ROI. So I put that in there. Okay, how are we doing, everybody? Are we all still here? By the way, guys, I've got nothing after this. All right, we are losing some people. So we're down to about 30 now, guys. So let me know, I'll give you another minute to ask a question, and then I'll kind of let you get back to using digital marketing to raise AUM. Oh, 2 more questions have come through. Fantastic. Here we go. Where are they? It's on the, we've got 2 more. It's in the chat, sorry. How long should the email content be? Are short emails better than long? Good question, Michael. Now I'm going to go back to my slides, and instead of torturing everybody going through them one by one, I'm just going to take you to this slide. Here we go. Yeah. So this slide is the one I mentioned earlier on. No, it's not. Sorry, everybody. See if I can get this right. Bear with me. It's going to work this time, promise. Here we go. So this slide here shows you that what we've got is that it's got text, but it's also got images. And as you go and scroll through the email, it's a big email, but what it has a really good balance. And if somebody's interested, they get all the information immediately. But if they want more information, all they have to do is move their mouse or scroll down. And all the information there is actually in bite sizes. So you've got information about the fund, how to download the fact sheet, performance of the fund. If you want to know more information about it, it's there. If you want to know more about the managers, it's there. If you want to read more about the fund, it's available. It's a very clever email. It's short and it's long at the very same time. Again, very much the gold standard. Okay, so there we have it. I'm just going to wait a bit more, because every time I wait, somebody asks a question. Yeah, we've got another one come through. Thank you very much. Adding videos. So if you go onto our website, we have a way of adding videos to an email. The way you do it is there's on our webpage, again, there's a link, and it actually tells you that there's a tool you use to actually convert the video into an animated GIF. And what that animated GIF will do, you can put it into your email so it looks like the video is playing in little incremental bits. And as, again, a real nice incentive to actually click on that to actually go to wherever that video is hosted. So, Michael, that's available on our website. So if you go into our website, type video in the search bar, you'll find it there. If not, what I have to do, I know you're registered. I'll actually send you a link on how to do that. Okay, everybody. So the hour is upon us. So on that happy note, I will see you hopefully next month, everybody, for our webinar on creative design and how important it is for fund marketeers. Again, thanks for everybody for being so generous with your time. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.